Hello and welcome to Live at Epiphan. This is episode 35, which I kind of was surprised by when I learned that today. It's Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern, so that it means it's time for Dan and I to discuss something interesting to do with streaming. And today, I think we actually have a really interesting one for all of you YouTubers out there. This is something specific to YouTube, so let's jump in. What do we got?
Yeah, so today we're actually going to be looking at a really interesting topic, and that is how to do multi-camera live streaming on YouTube. So YouTube has what I would call a somewhat underappreciated feature where live viewers can actually select from different camera streams which stream they want to watch. So we're going to sort of dive into the topic today, talk about why you might want to do it, how you do it, and some example use cases of people who are doing it well. But first,
as always, of course, chat with us, Facebook, YouTube. For this one, because we are going to be talking about some of the things Dan said, YouTube might be the preferred choice today. I hate to say it. So anyone watching on Facebook, if you want to play along, you might want to jump over to YouTube. But anyways, like, follow, subscribe, all of those things that you do on the socially networky things. And if you have any questions, make sure to throw them into chat and we will answer them about this particular subject.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of what's coming up in the show, I know some of you are still arriving here. We're going to be talking about what is YouTube multi-camera, how to do it, and then we're going to show you some examples of how it's being done. But you got some news you wanted to cover today.
Yeah, a couple news topics. Number one, earlier this week, I guess, Level 1 Techs did us the great honor of reviewing the Webcaster X2. We'll put the link to that review in the various descriptions. And
places. It's in the video description below, so if you want to watch it.
Check that out. It's a really great review, and we really appreciate those guys taking a look at the Webcaster. So definitely check that out. That would be great. Also coming up soon, December 7th, I guess that's not too soon, 3 weeks or so, Photo Joseph, also becoming a friend of Epiphan in a number of ways, will be doing some live streaming demonstrations and guides at B&H Photo and using Pearl, I believe, and a few other things. And it's going to be structured as a live streaming from beginner to pro and everything in between to really set up a nice use guide.
And I think he's going to be showing off some Lumix cameras as well, which, coincidentally, we were just talking about, work really well with Webcaster X2.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's another subject we can discuss, but I've been picking up on this trend reading in our forums where there's a thread about people posting which cameras they like to use with the Webcaster X2, and I've been noticing a trend that seems to be very favorable to Panasonic cameras. So if you guys have anything to share there, check out our forum.
Actually, Wendell, in the Level 1 Tech's review of a Webcaster X2, he was using a Lumix camera.
The G7, I believe.
Yeah, the G7. And he was actually saying that the 1080p quality on that camera is particularly good.
So anyway, at some point we might have to consider doing a show talking about various different uses with Panasonics in general. If that's something you guys would like to see, let us know. We always love those suggestions. So put it in the chat, send us an email, live@epiphan.com, with any suggestions you'd like to see, and we'll try and do that.
And once again, just reminding you guys, we're in chat. We're monitoring chat on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have questions throughout the episode, you want to interact with us, we'd love to chat with you guys. And don't be shy. You can just pop your comments right into the chat window. Yep. So why don't we jump into it? George, main topic. Let's talk about multi-camera on YouTube.
Yeah. So the general idea with multi-camera on YouTube is to allow the viewer to choose a perspective that they want to watch. How this is set up in YouTube, Dan will go through some demonstrations on how you actually configure this. But the general idea is maybe I don't like camera A, and as a viewer, I want to use camera B. And you don't always get that. You know, in a produced environment, you're at the will of the director or the producer who's directing the switches, and you just have to deal with whatever they give you. The idea with this multi-camera with YouTube, and this is actually a feature they've had around for a couple of years, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people know about it or use it very much, which is why we wanted to do this show. Because we think it's pretty cool, and I think it could help a lot of different people in some unique ways. Maybe let's...
Well, first of all, we're actually doing a YouTube multi-camera right now. So if you're watching this show on YouTube, you can go ahead and try switching cameras. So
hence my suggestion of maybe following along on YouTube today. In the lower lower right corner.
I guess it would be down,
Down here.
here next to your ratchet icon in your sort of YouTube overlay. You're going to see a little icon with sort of, it looks like a camera, but with like two arrows going like this. Go ahead and click that, and then you're going to see you have a couple cameras to choose from. So you can switch, and if you click right now, bum, 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 you're going to see us on camera 2, which is right over here. A little bit of a different perspective on things.
So the interesting thing, and that kind of goes into what I was talking about, is our main camera feed that you started on shows our green screen piece with the lovely ocean. Dan and I both wishing that that's where we were. We were both on vacation last week, and I think both of us are wishing that's where we were. But the second camera is a much more raw feed. So just to give you an idea of, one of the basics you could do if you want to have a very produced piece on a main screen and then have a much more raw or
behind the scenes.
Yeah, you could do it while running it as one YouTube event. And I think that's the magic of this feature is it's one YouTube event, but you can have multiple perspectives within it.
It's like having it's like aggregating, it's like aggregating multiple streams. Like this wouldn't even have to necessarily be multiple cameras. This could be different locations entirely.
Absolutely.
You could have one person streaming to the same event, to the same stream from a completely different part of the world and allow your viewer to choose that
exactly,
selection.
Which I think is pretty cool and can really, I think could be leveraged in a lot of ways. So maybe it will help people if we show how to set it up and how we would do that.
Sure.
So while you're queuing that up, Dan, we'll take a look at your configuration page in a moment. For any of you familiar with doing publishing on YouTube, it basically involves a server URL and a stream key. When you create multiple cameras within your configuration on YouTube, you basically end up with multiple stream keys. And so as Dan was saying, that stream key, put that into whatever encoder you're using, whether that's located in the same place or not. In our case today, we're using Pearl 2 as we always do to run the show, and we can create multiple channels within Pearl 2, and we're sending each of those channels to these different stream keys from those two different angles. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's interesting. Callan's saying he can't see the second camera option. Lisa, why don't we go to picture-in-picture for a second? And I'll show everybody where it is. I'm going to move sort of to the side here. So you're going to be seeing us on a delay here because there is a little bit of a delay. But basically, this is the live stream. Right down here next to, if you can see my mouse, it's kind of right. Everything's backwards. It's right here. So it's this little button right here. You click that, and then you're going to get this overlay here on the right. And then the top one is camera 1. And if you click this second one,
it'll change the perspective.
Boom, we're on our B camera over here now.
Yeah.
So that's how you switch. Now, with YouTube, you can have up to 6 different cameras. We're running 2 right now, but we could have up to 6, which is pretty impressive. Also, if you're watching on Facebook now, you can kind of see what we're talking about as well.
One thing you might note there is I believe this feature does entirely rely on YouTube's HTML5 player. So if you're using a browser that's using the old Flash player instead of HTML5, it may not show that button. Just as a quick.
What about the YouTube app? I'm going to try it right now.
That's a good question, actually. I have to say this
Epiphan. It's Google Art.
Oh yeah, so Callan's saying here, you have to put your mouse, over it, and you'll see it there.
I'm pulling it up on my phone right now.
I'm pretty sure there is a way to do it. It may be in the menu up at the top.
Let's see here.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
So maybe the mobile player doesn't show it.
So yeah, that's. Okay. I guess that would be a little bit of a drawback. Is that if you're using the
desktop player. Kind of thing.
If you're using the unless there's something that I've missed here that we can't see it in the YouTube app.
Entirely possible. Admittedly, we didn't think about that ahead of time with the mobile app, but. So anyway, let's take a look at configuring those cameras and how we do that. So we have that picture-in-picture up there. So yeah.
Yeah. So here I am. If you're familiar with the YouTube Creator Studio live streaming dashboard, this is what it looks like. Now you can't do this with Stream Now. First of all, let's just preface that. Stream now, not possible. You have to create an event.
Always the straightforward, no frills.
Yeah. So here you go. Schedule an event. We're going to call this multicam test. And I'll just leave that unlisted for now. Create. And when you create the event, it's going to always bring you to this page. This is your ingestion settings. Now, typically what you do is you can choose a single-use stream key or a reusable stream key if you're using the same encoder. And we're just going to choose, let's say I was doing this with a webcaster.
So I'm just going to jump in there for a second and actually just throw in a helpful tip. For anyone who uses the same encoders over and over and over again, this reusable stream key, especially for Pearl customers of ours, the reusable stream key thing is super useful because you can set up basically these encoders as profiles in your reusable stream key drop-down box. And that means the stream key never changes. You're never going to have to go into your settings and change that stream key.
No more copy and pasting the stream key.
Exactly. You create your event, you choose your encoder, and that's it. But it also lends itself to this multi-camera thing. So that little little piece there.
Okay, so here you see here, like you might not notice this typically when you're in the ingestion settings, but it says main camera. So we're choosing the stream key of our primary main camera feed. However, next to main camera, there's an option here called add a camera. Okay, let's do that. Click add. Boom, camera 2. You can name it whatever you want. We're just going to call it, I don't know, side cam or something. And then again, you choose a reusable or a single-use stream key. And there you go. You get a unique stream key for the second camera. I can add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras you can add here. So once you get all those stream keys, you could put those into, if you're using OBS, you could be streaming with OBS to those stream keys. You could be using something like a Pearl 2, like what we're using to stream this show.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, you can actually do this with multiple webcasters. I actually tried it out this morning, and it works.
So that's an interesting one, because that question kind of came up in the Level 1 Tech's review. They said it would be cool if you could use multiple webcasters to do this multi-camera thing.
Yeah.
So you're saying earlier today you did that successfully?
Yeah. So in web, so I'll go back to the live streaming interface here 1 second again.
Because that could be really cool. Like the webcasters are so small, right?
Exactly.
You could just position them wherever and feed the same event.
Yeah, so how it works with a webcaster, again, you can't do this with Stream Now. You have to set up the event in a web browser first to take advantage of this feature, and now YouTube's going all slow. So let's just go back to full screen, Lisa. Basically what you do with your webcaster is once you've created those cameras in your ingestion settings, you will be able to see those as a publishing destination with your webcaster X2 settings. So the same way you would stream to an event with your webcaster, you can actually stream to a camera within an event under your published destination.
So yeah, because when that came up when I was watching the review and he mentioned it, I went, yeah, how does that present itself through the YouTube API, which is what Webcaster uses, for those of you who don't know. That's interesting, but that makes sense.
Yeah, so Wendell, if you're watching,
the answer is yes.
The answer is you actually can use multiple webcaster encoders to stream multiple feeds to a single YouTube event, and then allow your viewer to make the choice on which stream they watch. Interesting.
So I guess one of the big questions is why?
Yeah.
It's a cool feature. Like I said, it's something they've had around for a couple years, and my understanding is YouTube launched this feature back in 2015, geared and really pushed towards musical artists, concerts, festivals, but really focused on music and people who might want to see different angles of a stage or a band or something like that. And I was thinking a lot about it. I'm like, well, maybe that's why it hasn't taken off. It's because there's not really a ton of that on YouTube anyways, or at least not live. So, what else could you do with this? And why isn't it being pushed as this feature that everyone knows about?
Well, I think we discovered one of those reasons today, is that at least as far as we could tell, it didn't work with the YouTube app on my Android device. So that might be a reason.
That could be. And
a little bit of a drawback there.
yeah, and as we've explored in previous episodes, the majority of YouTube users are mobile.
Well, about 50% of watch time is on a mobile device and growing, probably, right? So, but there definitely are, I think, a lot of interesting use cases for why you might want to do the multiple cameras within a stream. I'll show you one example here. This is, if you watched our episode a while back called Streams We Like, Anne actually had pointed out this game stream channel she liked. So this is, what is this, Game Attack? And what they do is they play multiplayer games online, and what you can do with their camera switch feature is you can choose which personality you want to follow. So if you want to follow, gamer number one, you can see the game from his perspective, or you can switch over. I'm on Boland's camera right now, but I can switch over to Craig, and now I'm seeing Craig's perspective.
Right.
So you get his picture-in-picture. You see what he's doing in the game.
But you get his audio as well. So in this case, when Anne brought this up during our Stream We Like thing, she was particularly saying that, she likes their channel as a whole, but she's particularly interested in one of the two guys because of the personality difference between them. So they're using it to, like when I've been trying to think about this in my own head, the best analogy I've come up with, and maybe it's a generational thing, but when I grew up, I read a lot of choose your own adventure books when I was really young. And that's what this reminds me of, is a choose your own adventure stream method, right? If you put the content there, it puts that power, as someone mentioned in chat, puts that switching power into the hands of the viewer, so that maybe it's a matter of choosing, personality A versus personality B. Like maybe you don't want to listen to what Dan has to say today, and we had each other on different cameras, right? I mean, you could do that.
Yeah. I think that's a good case. Let's talk about some other possible uses. The first one that came to mind for me was sports, for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
So let's say you're watching. I like to watch hockey. Let's say I wanted to choose a camera. I want to be able to see the main ice cam, or maybe I want to just watch the net cam and just see that perspective and get a totally different view of the ice and the action. That might be really interesting. And we were just talking with Dave a little while ago, and he was saying, it might be interesting if one of those feeds was just replays. Right. Or maybe one of those feeds was just sideline reporting, and you could watch an event, but then choose your perspective. Like Martin is saying in chat, the viewer gets to choose what they're interested in rather than the director having to do all the switching. Yeah, and so, but we were also thinking, because I brought that up, saying, the NHL live streams, for those of you who ever watch hockey games live on here in Canada, Rogers mans it, but the NHL really is the ones running the back end of it. But there's a multi-camera choice in those live streams. I don't know anybody who uses it live during a game because it cuts out the commentary and stuff like that. That might be a pro, but I would think that from a coaching perspective, VOD, like video on demand afterwards, if you had a single game, sport of whatever kind, it doesn't really matter what it is, and it was shot and live streamed from multiple angles, from a coaching perspective, you could be looking at these different angles as you need them without someone else interfering. And so that's an interesting one for me. I mean, that's really interesting point I think that you brought up, is that not only is the live stream giving you the ability to switch cameras, but the VOD afterwards still retains that. So within one video, you're really getting multiple sources, multiple feed, up to 6 of them. So that's pretty cool. Like, imagine you had like a big sports tournament, perhaps. Like, we have hockey tournaments here in multi-arena facilities where perhaps there's 5 or 6 hockey games going on at one time, or a ping pong tournament with multiple tables set up. Pool, anything like that. Sure, you could go and choose the table you want to watch. And then after the event ends, everybody has a copy of their replays, right, that they can review. Yeah, and I think from the content creator's perspective, the beauty of that is it's one event. It's one contained event. You're not sending out 6 different URLs. You're sending out one URL to that one event on aggregating YouTube. All those streams into one and then cohesive event, and then let the viewer decide. So from a music perspective, let's say it was a music festival that had 3 stages all running at the same time. You could do one event, have each stage with their own camera in YouTube, so that people can choose
what it is that they want to, what stage they want to watch. As Callan pointed out, 2 locations. Yeah, absolutely.
Callan's saying he could see it being used at horse shows for the international market. That's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Choosing, if there's multiple events, sub-events within a large master event, and giving people the ability to make those selections where what event interests them at the time.
International one is great because our coworker Yusufa brought this up earlier too, and international is what triggered this in my head. Languages.
Brilliant.
What do you need to do for multi-language? YouTube doesn't have a way of selecting a separate audio track, but if you have multiple cameras, they all have their own audio track. So if it's something like, let's say 3 different webcasters, English, French, Spanish, with different audio and maybe the same camera, depends on your setup.
Yeah, like if you had live, like a live translation happening,
exactly.
You wouldn't even necessarily have to have different cameras. You could have it all happening on one main camera feed, but just a different audio track on each. Exactly. On each stream, which would allow people to listen in whatever language they chose.
Exactly, which I think is great. That's really, again, what we just said, but it's still only one event, so it makes it very easy from a content creator's point.
Maybe there's a large conference with multiple breakout rooms, and you want to be able to choose the room that you're in at different times within a master conference. That's a really nice feature. And then, hey, if you missed the one lecture that you wanted to go back and watch, it's still there in the video on demand, so you could check it out later.
Yeah. Or we mentioned this earlier. Sometimes you see awards shows, Hollywood award shows, for those who watch them. Sometimes they do these backstage interviews, right after someone's won award, whatever. But you want to see more of those backstage interviews than ever actually make it to TV broadcast. If that was live streamed on YouTube using this feature, you could have a camera that's permanently set up as this is only backstage interviews, because maybe that's all you care about, and who cares about what the host is saying off of the teleprompter, which is boring anyways, right? So it's that flexibility to have these multiple content types, I think is super cool. And some of the ideas we were throwing around earlier when we were talking about this, the multi-location stuff, multilingual, music festivals we've mentioned, sports.
Lectures. Let's say that you were doing a lecture and you wanted to, maybe you have like a main camera on the professor, but there's also another, like a whiteboard or another projector or some other information.
You could do your main camera on something like Pearl, where they're mixed in picture-in-picture, side-by-side, but then have multiple cameras for ISO as well. So you could break that out.
Yeah,
that
so
could be cool.
Maybe you want to give people the ability to zoom in and see that whiteboard closer and to look at that for a longer amount of time.
Yeah.
That would certainly be possible with the multi-camera feature as well.
That would be cool.
So really, like, I guess it's interesting that this hasn't been used more, because I think we've mentioned at least 10 different possible use cases
seems
here
like
today.
Such a powerful and flexible option. So if you guys have any questions about this, it looks like we have a ton of people really following along with these ideas from a creative point of view, which is
Productions
awesome.
is saying this would be valuable for education too and training.
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. Dave's chiming in there from next door.
Yeah, fashion show. That's cool.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. Does anyone have any specific questions about how to set it up while we're here? Throw it into chat.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I think that's sort of covers that off. I'll keep an eye on the chat here, but what do we have coming up next week?
Yeah, so next week we're going to be looking at PTZ cameras, pan, tilt, zoom. That's what it means, right? So PTZ cameras, they're USB cameras, typically that you fix in a specific location, and then you feed to, whether it's a live stream or a recording. PTZ cameras are useful for all kinds of different applications. So we're going to be looking at some different types of PTZ cameras, what they're used for, and how you can take advantage of a camera. If you have say a location or a venue where you need a fixed camera, you don't need to move the camera around, PTZ camera can be a really nice option, because you can
especially streaming it to YouTube multicam.
Yeah, right? Like, we should have another one just up in the ceiling here and give people the option to choose it when they want.
See the back of our heads instead.
Yeah, very exciting. Next week, PTZ cameras. If you want to learn about PTZ cameras and some of the advantages, tune in next week on Thursday.
Yeah.
Emigrev is saying, what would we recommend for esports events? How would that be set up?
Well, so that's an interesting one. If you're talking esports, so I guess week or two ago, I spent quite a bit of time on a weekend watching the Overwatch World Cup during BlizzCon. Don't judge me, it's just what I do. But there were several times during that broadcast on Twitch where I had wished that I could see a different perspective at different times. And this is where I think that could come in handy. Maybe I want to see player reactions instead of actual gameplay, or maybe I want to, I don't want to listen to the analysts, when they're setting up the match. I actually want to watch the players doing their warm-ups because I find that super interesting. Maybe there's a separate camera that's focused on, just that team or that individual player's warm-up routine instead of having to listen to the often annoying analysis desk, right? So yeah. I think that could be very powerful with esports. I think the trade-off there is that most esports are leveraging Twitch, and Twitch doesn't have this feature. So, I don't know. I guess it depends on...
It's certainly possible, though, if you wanted to run an event using an esports event, using YouTube and multiple cameras, it could be a really nice option for sure. We've got a few more questions coming in here.
Yeah, Callan's got an interesting one that's actually come up quite a bit. It's somewhat unrelated to the topic today, but he's asking, could you bring in a PowerPoint over USB to a webcaster? This has actually been asked quite often and has come up in some reviews and comments. There's a challenge with that. The webcaster's USB input, which we normally talk about using webcams with, is only USB 2. Most USB capture cards, like our own AVIO, are USB 3, and as such, they draw a lot more power than USB 2 really can provide, and it also would be pretty low frame rate limited by USB 2.
But if you pointed a PTZ camera or just like a low-power webcam at your PowerPoint, you could make it work.
There could be other ways to do it, but with a capture card like AVIO, it's not something we specifically test for or have done a lot of work targeting that. Because it's USB 2, it's going to be a bottleneck for that type of device. But for a webcam pointing at something specific or a USB PTZ cam pointing at something specific, no reason that wouldn't work.
Certainly doable. Paride Dominici, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Is there any mode in YouTube to mix the different cameras?
No. It's only a manual selection of one at a time.
Yeah,
so there's...
But, I mean, that source, that second camera is a source. So if you mix it before you send it to YouTube, you could be doing...
So a prime example of what I mentioned before is if you were using a product like Pearl, a multi-encoder that also does mixing, you could be doing a mixed camera, your main one, and then your secondary cameras as ISO of those different pieces. So there are ways of doing it, but it would be a little bit different.
Yeah. Esteban was asking about streaming 2 cameras using a single Pearl 2. Yes, that's actually what we're doing right now. You could stream all 6 cameras with one Pearl 2.
Pearl 2 can capture and stream 6 different HD sources simultaneously to 6 different destinations if you wanted to.
So if you want to saturate all 6 YouTube cameras with a single device...
One Pearl 2 will do it.
Pearl 2 is the perfect device for that. Now, bandwidth is also a question. Is there any consideration there?
Yeah, I mean, because these are separate streams, your bandwidth multiplies by the number of cameras you're choosing to use. So if you're, let's say, in one location and you're running 3 different cameras and all of them are 1080p at 5 megabit, you're now at 15 megabit. So it's pretty straightforward math.
Now Esteban's also asking, he sees that there's 4 HDMI inputs on Pearl 2. Does that mean he can output 4 different cameras in a stream?
Yes.
Yes. So there's actually also 2 SDI inputs as well.
Which gives you the total of 6.
And 2 USB ports, which you could be using to bring in other camera sources as well. We're actually bringing in our second camera source right now using an AVIO HD into one of the... so this green screen you see running behind us is actually a video source that's coming into our Pearl using one of the USB ports and an AVIO grabber.
It's an interesting setup.
So Pearl, very versatile. If you're looking to mix and stream multiple cameras, up to 6 cameras simultaneously, you can do it with Pearl 2.
Yeah. One other one in here was from Callan asking about powering a hotspot 3G kind of dongle from Webcaster. Yes, you can do it off the USB ports. We've done it ourselves at one of our tests where one of our colleagues took it to a bar where there was a band playing and he live streamed that event. He powered a small 3G LTE stick from the USB port. It also had a Wi-Fi hotspot on it that Webcaster was able to join to do the stream with, but he powered it using the USB port. I will say that's not always ideal, depending on how you're running Webcaster. For example, many people doing that setup are running Webcaster off of a battery. That increases the power draw of Webcaster so much that many batteries will fail or fall down. If you're powering Webcaster off the wall and doing that, should be no issue. But again, just take a look at what your power consumptions are and realize that another half an amp off of Webcaster, to power that stick is got to come from somewhere.
So to be clear, the Webcaster is not receiving the network over USB.
Right.
It's still connecting to the USB dongle over Wi-Fi.
Right.
It's just being powered off of the USB port on Webcaster.
Exactly.
Emma Grev is asking, AVIO HD, can it be used on Pearl 2? That's neat. Yeah. We're doing it right now.
On the USB 3 ports? Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got this great ocean background running, and it's actually, this video source is actually just running off of a laptop. In fact, it's a YouTube channel, which I will recommend. It's in the video description down below. If you want to find a nice, relaxing, sort of fireplace channel-esque nature scene, go to the YouTube channel Peaceful Scenes, and there's a link in the video description down below.
We're reviewing it for fair use.
So thank you, Peaceful Streams, for the beautiful green screen backdrop today.
All right, I think that pretty much
I think that covers it. If you have any other more questions, you can always send them to us live at epiphan.com by email, or you can come and see us. We'll be here next week. Same time, same channel, Epiphan Live, Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern. And for today, we'll sign off. I'm Dan.
I'm George.
And see you later.
Thanks very much.